as ever, we have about half an hour on our latest webinar. And today we're going to be looking around and talking about the issues of AI, amongst other particular topics. We have a number of new faces here, but before I ask them to introduce themselves, I thought it would just dwell a little bit on how much confusion there seems to be in the market these days about the issue of artificial intelligence and AI broadly, and how this is impacting those in key business operations and key business roles, finance, for example, procurement, supply chain, and IT. Now, we know we can't ignore AI, but there are a lot of questions on this particular issue, as well as others, and we are going to be hopefully drawing out some answers on this one today. But first of all, I'm going to ask our guest speakers if they could quickly introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with Greg Hawthorne, who is new to Espria, to give himself a quick introduction.
Morning, everybody. Greg Hawthorne. I joined, I'm on week 6 as CTRO with Espria and settling in nicely. Very much enjoying it. And thanks for everybody who's attending.
Thank you, Greg. And I'll turn to Laura, then Rob.
Hi, everybody. My name's Lauren. So I'm from Gamma. I'm a UCAS specialist here, and I also cover CCAS. I've been at Gamma for about 18 months now. Looking forward to speaking to you all today and hopefully answering some really good questions.
Brilliant. Rob.
Good morning. My name is Rob Smith. I work for Xerox. My role is I'm head of business development for our software and services portfolio that are supplied via partners such as Espria.
Brilliant. And we have 2 new faces today who've joined us. Andrew.
Hello. So my name is Andy Blomley. I work for TP-Link, and I am the solution and product solutions manager for TP-Link UK Limited.
Brilliant. And finally, Dale.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Dale Cullum. I'm a sales engineer with Sophos, been with the company about 3 years, but I actually share a birthday with Sophos in that I started in 1985 in the same year that Sophos did. So it'll be our 40th year fighting cybercrime next year. So I'm looking forward to a big celebration.
Well, I suggest a big happy birthday there, Dale, for you.
Thank you very much. For next year. For next year.
For next year. I'm going to start with a bit of a broad question, and I don't want this to be too much of a curveball for our guest speakers here, but I thought it might be an idea to start with a broader overview on AI and its impact on business, and to ask a very straightforward question, and that is, how important is it that AI is aligned with the business strategy and all the objectives of the business? And if it's okay with you, Greg, I'd like to start with you on that one. And then I'll bring in other people as we progress.
Thanks. I mean, it's fairly flippant to say it is important, but I think the use cases for AI and understanding them within each organisation are probably the most important things, and having a strategy to help you remain competitive, training your staff to use AI efficiently and ethically, of course, is equally important. I do worry that AI is just a hot buzzword that people talk about it without really understanding how it can help their business, and that's the important point. We saw the launch of Copilot earlier this year, and I think there was initial buzz, and we've seen ups and downs of people having different views on it, and learning to work with these tools is probably the most important thing, really, as much as it is to have a strategy.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to bring Andy in on that one and see what his view is on that one.
Well, it's quite interesting with TP-Link because we have very many different facets of AI. So if I, for example, give you an example, we use AI within our CCTV range of cameras, where we're looking at to sense, even, the color and type of a vehicle. We can use AI to determine whether somebody's wearing a hat if they're walking into a particular building, for example, and we can flag that. So that's one aspect that we use, embedded AI. Other parts of it, we use it to enhance our customer experience. So, especially out of hours, if you have a technical problem out of hours and you use our chatbot, that chatbot is powered by AI. Now, it has human beings that oversee the AI, but your first conversation will be with an AI chatbot until you get to a point where the AI decides that actually I need a human being to talk to them this. And then it will move you over seamlessly to an actual human.
And Lauren, is that your understanding and your view as well?
Yeah, so I think it's a funny one with AI. I think a lot of businesses actually fear it, and it's not until they start delving into the world of AI and they start understanding exactly what it can do for them. If you look at the AI tools, Andy sort of touched on them on a couple of them. They can look at, for a business, it can mean higher efficiency, productivity, and innovations. If we use AI to help streamline routine tasks, it can also help them enhance the decision making and personalize customer interactions, support remote working. I think it really can help a business to grow and also streamline so much of like the mundane tasks. I was at an event not so long ago, and she was saying that this is a once in a generational thing, and don't fear it, embrace it. Let's all get to grips with it and understand exactly what it can do for our businesses. And she's so right in that. So yeah, I think a lot of businesses underestimate just how clever AI can be. And I mean, what Andy just said there, to be able to describe or to be able to identify colours of cars and hats, unbelievable.
I mean, it's interesting you reference that as an example, because actually AI tools are only as good as the data that they're built on. So I guess the question then is, how vital is it? It sounds a counterintuitive question, but how vital is it to have that data and have the right data and enough of it? And I'm going to bring Dale in on this one and ask his opinion on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a really interesting topic. I mean, volume of data is going to be a very, very important factor, and also the quality of that data. You hear talk of large language models, which are able to interpret huge amounts of data very, very quickly, which is something that we as humans can't do. I'm not quite as trusting possibly of AI as perhaps some of the other participants in the forum here. Having a security hat on, I have concerns about privacy and data protection. So I'm a little bit more cautious. But when I think about how we use AI in our business for ourselves and to serve our customers, for example, it's a great tool for doing the heavy lifting. We in our managed detection and response team, we typically, I think, see on a daily basis, well in excess of 30 billion events. And we're able to use AI to very, very quickly correlate and extrapolate, all of the information associated with these and present it in a very sensible format to our human analysts, who are then able to act on that in a very targeted way and using common sense, or all of the traits that we have as humans that AI doesn't. We can bring that to bear and deliver resolutions in minutes, where historically, those response and remediation activities would have taken hours or even days with a traditional, support capability.
No, I saw some vigorous head nodding there from Greg, and I wonder whether you're going to add something to the points that Dale was.
Well, it just kind of reminds me of a news article that I think was reported quite heavily by Linus Media Group about a year ago, where an AI chatbot had realised that it needed to solve a captcha, and realised that was a human interaction, and it figured that a human wouldn't necessarily solve a captcha for a bot, so it lied and said it was visually impaired and hired a human on Taskfire to solve the captcha for it, and said, I'm visually impaired, could you solve the captcha for me? And the human went ahead and did it, and the AI bot was intuitive enough to realize that it needed to do some stuff to get a human to do a thing it couldn't do. And that leads back to what Dale was saying about being incredibly cautious around the security, and what I said at the top of the call, the ethical implications of how we use AI on a day-to-day basis. There is a story about that. You can Google it. It's quite an interesting thing.
I'm certainly going to look that up. I really am. I'm going to bring Robin here, and Xerox no doubt will have a specific viewpoint on that point that we've been talking about just now.
there's so many different areas of where we can use AI. So it could be really simple stuff from a device point of view, device management. That if you think now, the days of customers wanting to pick up the phone and ring a welcome centre, a call centre to say, my technology is broken, please can you arrange for an engineer to come and fix it? Whereas somebody made the point earlier on about chatbots, as we are used to having a digital interaction with our suppliers and our service providers. So what if we can use AI now for our devices on preventative maintenance, that we can see part A is broken, we need to send an engineer. Well, at the same time, we're sending the engineer, part B will expire next week, include that part, so we can use the data to be able to see on a preventative maintenance point of view. That can then move into the users. So users that are using our devices and they're scanning and printing their documents, if they're scanning to online systems, what about their usernames and their passwords and things like GDPR, protecting email addresses through to the data itself? So do we need to, is there certain bits of data that need to be hidden, redacted, protected, not readily made available? It's a very vast conversation, but I would go back to something that Lauren said, that when you listen to what we see in the press about things like Copilot and ChatGPT, was it Elon Musk that said anybody that comes into one of my buildings with an iPhone, that device will not be allowed on the premises because they're concerned about how these tools and the way that they can access data. There's a lot of scary stories out there, but actually, if you look a bit deeper, you'll realize, whilst it's now branded as AI, this is technology that we've been using for the last 20 years, especially in service delivery.
Well, I'm going to come on to Copilot in a minute, but actually we've been talking a lot here about the importance of protecting sensitive data. So it would be remiss of me if I didn't ask Dale a very direct question. Do you think using AI, we can trust an organization to look after sensitive data and make sure it is protected by using AI tools?
This is a difficult subject, because I think so many of the topics that I talk about on a daily basis in relation to IT and security in general come down to education. We talk a lot about people, process, and technology. Okay, and from a security perspective, an encryption perspective, whatever, that we've got the technological solutions. That's the easy bit. The hard bit is educating, our users to use it in the way that's prescribed by process consistently. When we look at the way organizations are attacked, there is the well-known, kind of typical threat vector of having a vulnerability that's been exposed. But more often than not now, hackers don't break in, they log in. They'll steal credentials, okay, or maybe they'll gather information through phishing. And this is all related to social engineering and the user. So we can do great things with AI, to protect the data. But we also need to protect ourselves both from the attackers and our users, and make sure they're properly educated to deal with the day-to-day requirements that's associated with the technology that we deploy.
Interesting point you've raised there. So at the end of the day, what you're saying is we probably need human intervention to make sure the humans behave rather than the AI and the technology itself.
Yeah, and I think it's a fundamental thing with AI, and perhaps not everyone kind of realizes it, but you can make it do magical things. But a lot of AI models need to be trained. Okay, and invariably that training is happening by humans. Okay, and there are good humans and there are bad humans, and you can train AI to go in whichever way you want to achieve the outcome that you want. And this is really where we kind of open a really big ethical debate, about the kind of relationship there. We can't make any assumptions that AI will do good for us. We have to protect ourselves against the other possible outcomes.
Andy, do you have an opinion on that?
I was just going to say, actually, I use AI as an auditing tool to actually confirm that the human beings have configured things correctly. So the weakest link to a lot of security systems is, my digits. I make a small mistake. If I'm designing a firewall solution and I forget one particular port or leave something open, etc. And so using AI tools as an auditing tool to go through all of that, to look at the thousands of lines of code, to sit down and make sure that we haven't made any mistakes, is incredibly powerful. And there it is just to highlight an error. And also using it to sit down and a task that I detest, which is sitting down and marking up all my code, putting actual realistic, explaining what it is doing. AI is absolutely brilliant for that. It will put it in the right context. It will sit down and create the documentation so I can share it with my colleagues.
You've almost answered my next question, actually, but I am going to ask it all the same. I'm going to throw it at Greg, and then I'm going to bring Lauren in on this one, and that is, how can AI products like Copilot, how can they deliver team efficiencies? And I'll start with that question, if I may, Greg, with your good self, and then move on to Lauren.
So I use Copilot every single day. So I started the call by saying we need to be cautious, but then I'm going to follow it up by saying, but I use it every day. I actually use it both. I use Copilot at work. I use ChatGPT in my personal life for a whole plethora of things. I give some examples. So I find Copilot really good for when we're responding to tender documents. It's really good at analysing the submissions that our customers have written, helping me summarise what they're asking for quickly, and also helping me craft responses based on the data that we have in our organisation. So that's a big differentiator with Copilot versus ChatGPT, is it's going to leverage the data that I have within my tenants, so I can much more quickly write very bespoke content for my clients based on data that I already have in a much more succinct and efficient way, and it's genuinely changed how I do my job.
And Lauren, a view from you.
Yeah, so just to follow up with what Greg's saying there, exactly what I believe in as well. It does really help you to streamline those routine tasks, enhance your communication. And essentially, within any business, you want to be able to optimize the workflow, automate the repetitive tasks, and streamline that communication. And Andy touched on it. The other big factor for me, especially, is reducing the errors, which can actually result in a loss of earnings or a loss of revenue for your business. That's a massive factor for most businesses. And if we're talking about AI, it's transforming the way that we work. Fundamentally, we're changing the way that the business can operate and engage, and not just with our workforce, but also with our customers as well. So yeah, I think it's a really powerful tool when used right. And agree, we do a lot of tenders where we utilize AI. And if I think about my husband's business, he's exactly the same. So it's an invaluable tool, and it although it does come with its security concerns, like Dale mentioned, I think used right is a huge change for any business.
And this is an interesting discussion, because it's bringing us onto a much broader issue about how digital transformation and artificial intelligence and the technologies we have at our disposal can really improve customer expectations. And I'm wondering, I want to sort of like ask, I guess, a broader marketing question, and that is how these technologies and how digital transformation can transform the promise of a brand and surpass those customer expectations. And Rob, if I may, I'm going to start that question with you, if that's all right.
Yeah, and it's similar to what I was saying earlier on, that for us with our technology, a big part of our customer engagement is service delivery. So these are mechanical devices, and invariably they're going to have problems with them. So a big part of how we can surpass the customer expectation is entirely down to the customer experience. Do we want to sit on the phone for 20 minutes trying to diagnose a problem? Or do we want to use the technology where we can press a button on the panel of the device that says, I'm broken, I need assistance. And all the bits of information that are needed, the serial number, the IP address, the fault code, all the back end, the page volumes, all that information that we might get asked can all be passed through automatically. One of the things we found, we've released an app on our devices that can automate all of this. And we know that on average, if a machine can be resolved remotely, then this will mostly 90% of calls will be resolved in less than 10 minutes. 6 minutes of that call can be spent just getting the right information.
Okay.
So we can take what is a 10-minute call and make that a 4-minute call by taking all the basic information that's needed, and then we can release the customer to go and do something far more importantly. So how can we help with surpassing their expectations? It's improving the customer experience by taking away the mundane parts that effectively is where we are losing most of our time.
And Andy, are you seeing that sort of process, if you like, that sort of impact?
So, one of the things that, we have the ability with Amada is we can, at a user's request, log into their systems. So we can just be added to their site. So we can overview that site. We can give recommendations. We can look at how that site is performing. And we have, key KPIs within the actual dashboard that you can view what's going on of a wireless network or CCTV network, etc. So we have that remote view, and that's incredibly powerful for a customer. They can ring us up or another form of communication and give us access. And once we have access, we can view everything, make recommendations, and get them online quickly.
And I'm sure, Greg, this is a similar stance and a similar view from yourself.
Yeah, I think it's been touched on a couple of times, that thing about streamlining workflows and improving customer experiences and reducing repetitive tasks. And I think the knock-on effect to that and the fear factor is whether or not AI displaces human resources. But I think I'm a firm believer in it. It allows them to be refocused on the more strategic things that are going on within the business. And actually, I would argue, helps drive staff retention if used in the right way, where people are able to focus on the elements of their job that they enjoy doing. Certainly that's true for myself. There are bits of the job that I can have the AI tools at my disposal support with, drive better quality, and actually make those the staff more content in their day-to-day lives.
You touched on a really, really important point there, and that is about staff recruitment and retention, and how technology and IT in general can actually help that particular process. And I'm going to noodle into that one with you all a bit, if I may. And Dale, I'll bring you in, and I'm sure you will have an opinion on how that can happen.
Well, it's interesting. I especially have an opinion because my wife works in HR, people services, as they like to call it now. And I was actually surprised because we were having a discussion about AI just recently, and I was actually surprised how little adoption of AI there has been within the kind of within HR. I think of a recent survey. 92% of the respondents said they didn't use AI within their HR services. However, of the percentage that did, very small percentage that did, the focus was very much on sourcing candidates, facial recognition, and psychometric analysis, and all those kind of things. But what's also been made clear to me is that your average I guess that the person who was applying for a job, is generally speaking much more aware and able to use AI resources than a typical HR team is, because the poor old HR team, it seems to be, down the line from the decisions that have been made upstream, and they take what is delivered to them largely. They're not so much a kind of like self-driving entity in terms of the IT they actually deploy. So that's been really kind of interesting to me, but it's clear that there is so much that we can use, within the technology, spectrum, to be able to enhance things like scheduling, personal training plans, and all those kind of good things. But I think it is an area, HR in general, where really, I guess we should all be focusing our attentions to see how we can help them to help themselves and make better use of these technologies that are becoming available.
It is down to lack of education with that, in that sense, though, isn't it, Dale?
Education again, the people element.
Yeah. Do you want to expand on that a bit, Lauren? I think you've made a really important point there, and I think
I think it just goes back to what we're all alluding to here, is that when you're speaking to people about AI and the possibilities and capabilities it has to offer you as a business, a lot of businesses still not adopting it or have even stepped into the realm of AI. So it's lack of education. So do they know what that could mean for their business? Instead, they're sat in a corner fearing, oh, this is going to take my job. No, what we want to do is we want to streamline this process for you. Ultimately, that drives the business growth. It takes away those mundane tasks that we've mentioned a couple of times. It can help enhance the decision making, personalize those interactions, and support the business growth. So I think it's a really important message, and it's our job to obviously educate our customers on what it actually does mean for them as a business.
It's a really important point, isn't it? Greg, I'm going to bring you in here because I've got a specific question on this, and that is, if you've got a dispersed team, like my own business, I've got most people working remotely most days of the week these days. And I guess the question is, a lot of companies have that, but how can tech and how can AI support them in continuing to deliver really good service to their customers in turn?
Well, I think the best example I can give is running a service desk. So generally in the MSP space, particularly, it was very difficult during lockdown and that when everybody was working remotely to give good quality service desk experience. If you think about sort of our traditional MSP space where we have lots of people working in a room together who can collaborate on issues, especially where you've perhaps got apprentices and academy schemes running and you want to drive knowledge into those people, that can be particularly challenging working in a remote environment. So I think where AI, I've seen a lot of innovation in this space, is using AI to help craft responses to end customers to give a much more consistent experience when you've got a dispersed team. So if you, Richard, were to update a ticket and AI kind of took your wording and gave it a much more esprit feel to that ticket, that really helps when you've got a dispersed team that's perhaps not necessarily able to collaborate as you would sat next to each other. And I think that's where we're going to see quality and consistency improvements through the use of AI.
Andy, I'm going to bring you in on that one. I'm sure you've got an opinion on that in terms of how we can get outstanding service going with remote workforce.
So, I mean, TP-Link is the largest supplier globally of wireless products. So most of the home workers in the world will be using at least one of our products somewhere. And that's an amazing thing. I look at how work has evolved, and I can be working wherever. I mean, I'm home working today. I'll be in the office next week, but I can be on site, and all of that. I have a mobile router which has VPN capabilities for secure access into our network, all built in. And without it, I'd be lost. And in fact, even today, because I work in the countryside, I'm using a 5G connection to make this call.
Yeah.
So again, on a TP-Link external 5G router.
And I guess this all takes us back to the issue of protection and security. So Dale, I'm going to ask you to give us an opinion here on this particular point.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously, I have a lab for a lot of the work I do, and it's at home because I work from home. And for me, a big part of what I do is keeping what I do at work separate from what I do at home. And I think lockdown was a very interesting time for me because a lot of businesses went from having virtually no home working to being 100% home working within a matter of weeks. And solutions were pushed out very, very quickly. And it kind of like as we're now a few years along, we're kind of in a situation now where we need to revisit a lot of this and focus on doing it right rather than doing it quickly. There are new technologies in play now, like zero trust, services, which are really important, because when we think about securing a business from home, we're probably talking about using a VPN, and that VPN goes from your home to the business, and then wherever else it needs to go from there in a lot of cases. And that isn't particularly terribly efficient, in a world which is heavily driven by software as a service. A lot of our apps like 365 are in the cloud now. And this is where zero trust can really play a huge part in separating, our home assets from our work assets, in ensuring that our compliance policies and our devices are safe to interact with the network, that the traffic goes the best, most performant path, especially when you're, for instance, using 5G, as Andy's mentioned, and these technologies will allow us to do that, in a seamless way that's easy to use and won't result in, a complete overload of the underlying support services that are there to look after it.
Thanks, Dale. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to quickly ask Rob the same question, but I'm going to leave the final word to Greg at the end of that, because I know we've all got different perspective and a different viewpoint on this particular point, and I want to put it forward. I do know what you mean, Dale. I was very fortunate. I have an MSP supplier called Espria, who literally had me shut down in my office and up and functioning within 24 hours when COVID hit. And I'm eternally grateful. So, Rob.
So the challenge we have when we look at things like hybrid working is how one challenge affects a different one. So, for example, you've got somebody that is processing invoices as part of our customer service, and a customer wants to phone up and say, can I check the invoice? I think there's something not quite right. Somebody needs to work from home these days, not so much because of COVID, but maybe it's because of school run or something like that. Hybrid working has remained. If we've got our data in a format that isn't accessible, i.e. the invoice is in the office, then we can't answer it. So from a productivity point of view, in order to facilitate being able to work from anywhere at any time, means having the data in a format that is accessible. But through doing that, we then create a new challenge, which is over security. Is the data protected? Are we locked down? Are we opening up ports that make it available for hackers to use them as on-ramps into our organization, whether that's through where we're storing the data or how we're using it on our various devices? So it's that challenge, and I think Dale said it really well there, where when COVID came, we acted quickly, not necessarily thoughtfully. So the piece that needs to be done now is really to sort of work with a supplier that has that ability, that doesn't just talk about the technology that's available, but has the ability to work with you to say, well, how are you working today? Which bits of data do you need for the various job functions, and how does it need to be used to understand the problem that can then propose to say, here's the right technology that you need to be able to fix that. Maybe it's a bit of hardware, maybe it's software, maybe it's a service. But what we shouldn't do is be focusing on the technology to start with, but actually understanding the problem.
Greg, final word sits with you.
I think Rob's just pretty much said everything that I would say, to be honest. I started to think about the question as it unravelled, and it's stealing all the words out of my mouth. But I guess that comes from a place of looking at the situation holistically, isn't it? And genuinely, you do have to look at the knock-on effects that each of your decisions have. I lost track of the number of IT managers, directors, support teams that were sat at home in lockdown with piles of laptops behind them, trying to frantically get them built, and situations where people's solution to the problem was to just give teams access on home PCs, and some very large organizations with high street recognized brand names that were literally allowing staff to just log into their corporate data from home PCs is mind-blowing. And I think there's a combination of technologies with vendors on this forum today and others that allow you to control that in a much more thoughtful way. And it goes all the way back to what I said at the start. We need to think carefully about what we do, treat AI and data in an ethical and concise way, and think it through.
Greg, thank you. That summed that up beautifully, and I love the way you managed to turn everything right back to the beginning in a great big circle. So at that point, we have overrun today. I have thoroughly enjoyed this discussion, and I hope you all have as well. And a big thank you from Aspria for joining us today, and thank you to all the participants in this webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Cheers,
Thank
my
you.
pleasure. Good.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.